So, Miguel, yeah, I did a short intro saying that it was quite obvious that you as PMI have a clear goal until 2030 to put the cigarettes into a museum, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. But let us give our audience a little bit of a broad picture. And we spoke last week, and you mentioned that 20 years ago, you've been so long at PMI. 20 years ago, there was an internal memo, and it said that the traditional old school CSR is not for you. What else did this memo said?
You got me there. I mean, it was a very basic memo. It's just a reminder that as a tobacco company, being socially responsible was not marketing to children, doing everything we could to develop less harmful alternatives. And this memo was in a context where, CSR was being practiced by a lot of people as sort of a fig leaf, that, you're doing something on the side so that you can continue with your business, as usual. And so the memo was just a reminder, we are a tobacco company. The biggest impact that we have on society is the harm caused by our products. So being socially responsible is to tackle that head on. What I'm happy to see has happened over time is, this was 20 years ago, CSR was something fuzzy. And what has happened in the meantime is that standards have emerged. You today talk about environment, social, and governance, which are inputs to a desired state, which is sustainability. And you talk about this in the context of business strategy. So the outside world changed, but we've also changed. 20 years ago, we were investing heavily in developing those alternatives, in doing the science and the research to find those alternatives. Today, we are commercializing it. Today, we made this clear commitment that you've just seen in this slide. So, yeah. A lot have changed.
It's a good beginning to tell us how did it look like 20 years ago? How does it look like now? But can you tell us more about your statement that sustainability is in the heart of your business strategy and the core driver for your transformation? How does this look as a big picture?
Look, I think in the sense, it's also not just for us. It has to be for every company that is in here. I was listening to the panels just before and the interesting presentations. Facts are there, right? We are reaching the limits of what our planet can take. And it's not just on the environment, it's also on the social side. We see, tremendous changes that are happening and that are requiring all of us, society, to adapt. So the question then is, how do you do that, right? What is the process? We all agree, if we think just as the SDGs as sort of the reference to what we're talking about, we all agree that businesses have a role to play. But what is that role? How do they play that role? Oh, you give some money to some, good, worthy causes. No, you can do that. That's a good thing. But that's not how businesses can drive change. Businesses can drive change by putting on the market products and services that will help us get there. Because that's what's sustainable. That's what's going to put us on a different path. So we were looking at, the climate presentation and the evolution. Well, it's about that. But it's not just about climate. You have a whole ecosystem. So I guess what I wanted to talk about is that how businesses play a role, right? Is this concept of materiality, actually the concept of double materiality, which we are using and is becoming a regulatory requirement in the European Union because of the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, where you have to look into, okay, what are my material topics? In the sense that, what are the topics where I'm having a biggest impact on society, whether it's on social or whether it's on environment. As a tobacco company, of course, our biggest impact on society is the health harm caused by our product. We could not talk about sustainability without having that at the heart of the strategy. So you look at that, you look at where do we have the biggest impacts, but you also have to look into what are material topics from the point of view of my ability to create value into the future. So you have those two dimensions. What are my impacts? Am I emitting a lot of carbon? But you also have to look into the impacts on you. Well, is climate change introduce fundamental disruptions into my business and in my ability to continue to stay in business? And you have to do that for all the relevant, for all the topics, and identify what are the ones that are material, and then you need to have a clear strategy for how you're going to tackle them. What do you want to do? You've seen our strategy when it comes to the health harm of our product. Our strategy is to move away from cigarettes, is to fundamentally change the nature of our business and to rely on smoke-free products. So you need to have a clear strategy. You need to have a clear goal. We have committed to have 50% of our net revenues coming from smoke-free products by 2025. And we're getting there, and we continue to make progress in that direction. And also, you need to have an ecosystem, a governance process in the company that allows you to make progress, right? So what we did at PMI is we've identified all the material topics for us, which of course are not just the health harm of our product. We cannot address that at the expense of human rights. We cannot address that at the expense of climate change in our value chain. So we identified product-related impacts, operational impacts. We set goals. We have KPIs so that people can scrutinize the progress that we're making towards those goals. And we have a governance process where it's the business owners, the business leaders that are responsible for each of the programs, and whether we make progress or not gets reflected in their paycheck, in our paycheck. Meaning, if we have something that we bundle it all together, all the material topics, all the goals and KPIs into something we call the sustainability index, which is public and you can scrutinize everything. If we don't perform as per the aspiration, that gets reflected in the remuneration of the company management. So you need to have all these elements into place so that you can understand, okay, this is how this company is committed to change, to transform, to deliver on some good. If you think about it, if you think about the energy transition, same thing. Same thing is how do you, if you think, for example, big oil company, nice projects, okay, is this real? How are resources being allocated? How progress is being made? How is management being remunerated based on that strategy? So that's what we've done at PMI.
It's an amazing story, and but the complexity of it took a little bit of our time, but we'll make sure to cover a more complex view of what you've been doing in more detail in our next edition of the magazine and on our webpage. And before we go off the stage, it's actually important for me and for the audience to realize another layer of this concept that you've been describing in the past minutes, and it is the collaborative effort. Mm-hmm. So which are the most important stakeholders on that matter? Whose help do you need to make this happen?
Look, that's a very good question. It's a very important question. I would say there is no more important stakeholders. There's the realization that we're all in this together, and each one has a role to play. Businesses, as I said, products, services that can mitigate actual impacts or deliver goods. Regulators stimulate innovation, create a level playing field. You've seen the video. We can move away from cigarettes in the next decade if we have the regulatory framework in place so that science is driving this process, so that we can trust this is happening. Consumers, society need to be engaged, need to be demanding, need to be scrutinizing, but also needs to be inclusive. Because we're all in this together. It doesn't, we're at a point in time and dealing with issues that are so big that being dogmatic doesn't help. We need to be pragmatic. We need to look at solutions. We need to look at science and put away some dogma and ideology so that we can progress.
Perfect. We are all in this together. It's, I think, a great message to send to our audience. So, Miguel, thanks so much for being on stage with me.
Thank you.